Gambir is an artist from Indonesia who is shot to fame and wealth because of his strange artworks. He mostly makes sculptures of pregnant women, and some of them look incredibly eerie. It's almost as if he is hiding something beneath them. Despite this, rich customers love his work and are ready to pay a hefty amount for it. One day, Gambir organizes an exhibition of his portraits. Several people come and appreciate his work in awe, but Gambir seems to be distressed about something. He is not satisfied with how his life is running. So, he walks out of the exhibition and starts smoking. Right then, his wife, Tyliada, approaches him and inquires if anything is wrong. Out of nowhere, Gambir starts apologizing to her, saying he did nothing wrong. Here, we get to know that Gambir is disturbed by something which will be revealed later in the movie. The following morning, Tyliada and Gambir's mom, Dela, can be seen discussing his illness. From their conversation, it is revealed that Gambir has been suffering from a disease that is hindering him from being a father. Sometime later, while having breakfast, the doorbell rings, and Gambir rushes outside to have a look. He finds no one, but notices the phrase "Tolong Soya" written on the floor, which means "Please help." Shocked, Gambir looks around the place once again, but there is no one. The same day, while Gambir is returning home after playing tennis with his friends, he remembers an incident with Tyliada. The scene then shifts to the past, when Tyliada and Gambir were in a relationship but still yet to be married. Surprisingly, she was already pregnant. Gambir wanted to keep the child, but Tyliada requested an abortion. This scene indicates that Gambir was fertile before marriage. He tries his best to convince his girlfriend against this drastic step, but she still won't listen. In the end, Gambir reluctantly takes her to a hospital, and they abort the child. After the procedure, the doctor wraps the child's corpse in a polythene bag and hands it over to the couple. When they return home, Tyliada makes a strange request to Gambir. She explains that although they lost their child, she wants to preserve its memories by keeping the corpse with her. As expected, this blows Gambir's mind, and he straight out refuses this sinister idea. But even after a lot of effort, he's unable to convince his weird girlfriend. So, in the end, he agrees to preserve the corpse and start making a pregnant woman's statue. When it is complete, he hides the corpse inside of it. One day, a guest visits Gambir's home and takes a look at the pregnant woman's statue. Surprisingly, he likes it and comments that it's a work of art. Gambir immediately reveals this to Tyliada, and the latter suggests he make more statues of pregnant women so that they can attract a lot of customers. Gambir agrees right away, but Tyliada gives him one more order. All the statues must have a fetus inside of them. There is no logic behind this, but just faith, she says. Once again, Gambir obeys and starts preparing the statues. From that day onwards, he also visits the clinic on a daily basis and secretly buys deceased fetuses. To his good fortune, the statues start getting recognition among the buyers, and soon they go out of stock. Seeing his progress and to expand the business, Tyliada's father builds a large exhibition hall for Gambir and gifts it to him. He then starts working as the company's manager and also marries Tyliada to Gambir. The scene then shifts back to the present, where Gambir is busy making some pregnant sculptures. Right then, one of his tools accidentally gets kicked under a huge wardrobe, and he has a hard time retrieving it. After a bit of struggle, Gambir somehow manages to slide the wardrobe, but to his surprise, there is a secret door behind it. He tries to break the lock on the door, but before he can do so, Tyliada arrives and stops him. She tells him that if he breaks the door, then everything between them will be ruined and disappear. This scares Gambir, and he stops right away, but after a while, Tyliada puts a large painting over the door to keep it hidden. Following this, Gambir simply carries on with his work as if nothing has happened. Next, we are shown a young boy lying on the floor with his hands and legs tied with rope. It is evident that his parents have been treating him badly. It is also revealed that he is the same boy who wrote the phrase "Tolong Soya" outside Gambir's house, asking for help. The following day, while Gambir is with his friend Dandang in a cafe, he cracks a fortune cookie and finds a note inside. It simply reads, "Look right." Gambir immediately turns right and notices the same phrase, "Tolong Soya," written on a wall outside the restaurant. Shocked, he bids his friend goodbye and walks out. Later, Gambir is playing tennis with his friends when he once again finds a note placed on his bag with "Tolong Soya" written on it. Annoyed, he asks his friends if they're behind it, but none of them speak up. Right then, he notices the same boy staring at him from the door. Gambir tries to get a closer look, but the boy simply runs away. Elsewhere, we are shown live footage of the little boy's house, where his mother forces him to eat dinner and beats him mercilessly when he refuses any order. Sadly, rather than saving his son, the little boy's father also starts kicking him with anger. Meanwhile, searching for answers, Gambir arrives at the same wall outside the restaurant and removes some posters from it. Under them, he finds the phrase written asking for help alongside the name of a building. He Hirosase. Gambier immediately starts searching for the building and finds it after a while. It appears to be a club of some sort. He then enters Hirosase and approaches the receptionist. Surprisingly, the latter is not pleased to see him, and she instructs the security guards to escort him away. It turns out that only the members of Hirosase can enter the building and explore it. Although Gambier is disappointed that he couldn't explore the place, he is adamant that he'll find some clues there, so he keeps lurking around. One day, while keeping an eye on the Hirosase building, Gambier notices his friend Dandung entering the club. A few hours later, Dandung walks out, and Gambier immediately asks him about the building. However, the sketchy friend refuses to answer anything. It's almost as if something really spooky is going on inside. Hence, left with no other options, Gambier finally decides to become a member himself. After meeting with the manager and registering himself, Gambier is provided with a personal room with a TV. The TV has a card with a list of different channels. Gambier carefully selects one of them and sees an old lady sewing her own hand to a hat. Perplexed, he quickly changes the channel and comes to a halt when he notices the same boy that he saw at the tennis court. The boy is staring at the camera and is being punished badly by his mother. Gambier watches the disturbing scene for a while, but when he can't take it any longer, he walks out of the building. Outside, he meets Dandung, who reveals that the cameras are secretly placed by the Hirosase Club and that there is nothing they can do to save the victims. However, Gambier is deeply affected by the way the little boy's parents treat him. Hence, he decides to search his house and save him. In the following days, Gambier starts visiting the club regularly, where he watches the same boy being punished by his parents. With each passing day, he becomes weak, and this badly affects Gambier. The latter tries to find clues on the little boy's location, but doesn't even come close. One day, Gambier holds another sculpture exhibition at his hall and invites a lot of guests. As usual, all of his artworks are sold within minutes, but surprisingly, some guests can be seen talking about the same boy, who is regularly mistreated. This indicates that these guests are also a part of the notorious Hirosase Club. One of them reveals that he watched the boy being drowned by his own mother, and now there is very little hope of his survival. Meanwhile, another guest talks about how the mother's going to electrocute him soon. That's nothing, man. I heard they were gonna force him to watch a mukbang marathon. Gambier, who is hearing all of this from a corner, becomes upset and rushes out of the exhibition hall. Shortly after, he arrives at the Hirosase Club building and enters his assigned room. Wasting no time, he turns on the TV and anxiously switches the channels to find the boy. Fortunately, he manages to find him. The boy is strangely calm. He stares at the camera and apologizes for what he is about to do. Gambier feels very bad for him, but can do little to help. Meanwhile, the little boy grabs a kitchen knife and heads towards his parents' bedroom. Then, in a shocking turn of events, he finishes his parents off in an act of revenge. I knew the mukbang marathon would be the last straw. As Gambier watches in horror, the boy commits the unthinkable. After everything goes silent, a distraught Gambier falls to the floor, regretting that he could not do anything to save the little boy. Sometime later, he gathers himself and again checks the TV card. To his surprise, he finds his wife's name there and immediately switches the channel to watch her. Gambier sees Tailiata and his mother Dela, but it is a pre-recorded video rather than a live feed. In the video, the two ladies discuss Gambier's inability to bear children and how it is going to be a problem in the future. Dela even encourages Tailiata to have intercourse with other men so that she can bear offspring. In particular, she wants her to make out with Gambier's close friends. Surprisingly, instead of refusing her strange request, Tailiata obeys and sleeps with Dandung. Later, Gambier also watches the video of Tailiata and her father conspiring against him to take a considerable chunk of his profit from his business. This finally reveals that Tailiata never loved him. In fact, she was always after his wealth and fame. Her father also joined in because he wanted to get rich. Meanwhile, after figuring out everything, Gambier becomes really angry and decides to take revenge. He has a plan in mind that will make all the perpetrators regret their actions. Shortly after, Gambier walks out of the building and calls all his relatives to celebrate the upcoming Christmas Eve together. After this, he meets a shady-looking man and buys an illegal gun from him. Gambier, who is rich and famous, is ready to risk it all just for the sake of revenge. The scene then shifts to Christmas Eve, where Gambier welcomes several guests to his home. He has decorated the place very well, with a large Christmas tree in the corner. Furthermore, to make the occasion more real, he has also prepared an exotic dinner by himself. After everyone has arrived, Gambier heads to the kitchen to fetch some wine for them. But before returning, he spikes it with a poison called Devilish Pit. As soon as the guests drink the wine, they become paralyzed for 10 minutes. They can see, hear, and smell everything, but cannot move or utter a word. With this, Gambier finally shows his true colors and grabs a knife. He then singles out each relative and explains what they did to wrong him. As everyone looks on in horror, Gambier approaches one of the guests and finishes him off. In this way, he berates and then kills all of the guests, one by one. By this time, the entire dinner table has become a bloody mess. At last, his beloved wife, Tyliata, is the only one left. Gambier decides to go easy on her and brings out the gun. But Tyliata, who has now started speaking a little, tells Gambier that if he kills her, he will never be able to find out the secret behind the hidden door. Hearing this, Gambier contemplates whether he should pull the trigger, but just then, he starts having flashbacks of all the men she has made love with. This angers Gambier, and he shoots Tyliata dead immediately. Following the massacre, he rushes to the hidden door and removes the painting covering it. He then breaks the door with an axe and barges in. Surprisingly, he finds a strange-looking room, which turns out to be the same one in which the little boy from earlier was trapped. Here, everything is finally revealed. All that transpired in the movie was only a visual representation inside Gambier's mind. The boy, who was constantly punished, was a representation of Gambier when he was little. Just like the boy, he also killed both his parents in cold blood while they were asleep. The only difference was that before he could commit the unthinkable, some cops broke through the door and saved him. The scene then shifts to the present, where Gambier is inside a mental hospital, waking up from his nightmare. He usually creates visions in his mind, some of which are very realistic. This helps him forget his gruesome past. The inspiration for the sculpture came from a journalist by the name of Ronti, who provided him with magazines and books to stimulate his creativity. Gambier admired Ronti and made her his wife, Tyliata, in his imagination. His friends, including Dan Dung, are revealed to be the hospital employees who take care of mental patients like Gambier. In the last scene, Gambier visualizes himself as a Catholic priest, helping a guy who had the same phenomenon as him. He counsels the man not to enter his forbidden door, which he refers to as the philosophical door of chaos. The movie ends with reporter Ronti calling his friend and walking away from the hospital when it is revealed that the place in which Gambier is being kept is none other than the Hirosase building. Oh boy, the good